Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Green Factor, a show where we talk about green design and the business of sustainability. I'm your host, Haris the Green Carpenter, and today we'll be talking about climate governance for businesses. So, with me today, we have Datin Sunita. Hi, Datin.
Hi, Haris. Thank you for having me
Thank,
here.
Thank you for tuning in. Like I shared previously, off screen during live, I did this show is I like to learn directly from source. For example, if I want to talk about production, manufacturing, I would talk to the production manager rather than consultant and all that. And I find that a lot of value that I get from them, and I feel like it's a waste if it's just me that is benefiting. So that's why I do the live show, and then more people can learn and grow together. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about climate governance. So the word is big, right? People always think like governance is only like big companies and all that, but we want to explore this more for so it doesn't matter whether you're small, micro, and even large to benefit from this session. But before we go into the topic, I think for the benefits of the viewers, can you share a little bit about your background and your journey so far, so that at least we have a rough understanding of what you do?
Haris, this is an amazing thing that you're doing. And I just love your not just activism mindset that you want to make the world better, but that you're so generous in wanting to share knowledge as well with so many people. So I was in the corporate world for many years. And about 3.5 years ago, someone reached out to me and said, there is, and this person was Karina Litvak, who is the founder of the Global Climate Governance Initiative, which is a World Economic Forum initiative. And she reached out and she said, we're going to be launching this soon in January 2019. Could you help set up the Malaysia country chapter? Because each countries are supposed to set up their own chapter. Now, what is this initiative about? At that time, although we launched with the support of the Securities Commission, Minister YB Yobiyin, and Bursa, there were many stakeholders that were very supportive of this. But at that time, climate governance was such a new concept. So I think many people sort of understand about the climate emergency. It is a simple enough concept that children can understand what it means, but it is sufficiently complex and nuanced that many businesses and boards of directors are struggling to understand this. So, one way of looking at this is that there are many risks arising from the climate emergency. And very often we talk about this as a triple crisis. So, it's not just climate, the warming of the planet arising from greenhouse gas emissions, but also biodiversity, that we're losing biodiversity at a very unprecedentedly rapid rate. And we rely on this biodiversity for our survival, and also pollution. So there are many risks that businesses are facing. So what allocators of capital, like shareholders, investors, bankers, insurers, want to know is, how are you managing this risk? Have you identified these risks and are you managing it? And it stands to reason that if this is an existential crisis, there are also opportunities. So are the businesses also seizing opportunities and being part of this ecosystem of solutions? Now, very broadly, what boards of directors and businesses need to understand is that there are two types of risks: generally physical risks and transition risks. Physical risks are things like what we are seeing in the physical world around us, extreme weather events. You can have rain bombs, which lead to flash flooding, soil movement like landslide and sinkholes, and this applies, as we even saw with Batangkali, even for vegetated slopes which seem to be stable. On the other hand, when we are trying to price this negative externality, which is emissions leading to all of these extreme weather events, um, businesses are likely to be affected during the transition to a warmer world. So, for example, carbon pricing, new laws and regulations, which make it harder for businesses to operate as usual. So businesses are facing physical risks and transition risks, and it will be very difficult for boards of directors who are long term stewards of the organization to claim that they were not aware. As a matter of fact, The science is so well established that if you make no disclosure in your regulatory reporting about these risks, the presumption is, and there's many legal opinions around the world that are already stating this, the presumption is that you have applied your mind to these risks and have concluded that they are not material, which is why your report doesn't include any reference to this. Now, of course, to anticipate this, regulators, whether your prudential regulator like Bank Negara or your capital markets regulator like Securities Commission and Bursa, are saying, you know what, these are the standards. And accounting standard setting boards are also coming up with game changing accounting frameworks. So you not only have to disclose what are the physical risks and transition risks that you're facing, how this affects all of the assets of your business. Are you exercising influence over your upstream and downstream, like your customers, your suppliers, for example, so that you are aligned to what is called a Paris aligned transition pathway? And the Paris Agreement, which all countries in the world signed in December 2015, committed all countries to their best endeavors to limit warming to 2 degrees compared to pre industrial times, and to keep pathways to 1.5 degrees of warming open. Now, currently, with all commitments that the world has made, we are on track for 2.7 degrees of warming. And this is very, very bad news because every single fraction of a degree of warming is going to be unprecedented changes to the people, species, ecosystem, and so it's crucial that we reduce risk, we limit losses and damages, which are going to be irreversible. So I hope this gives you a little bit of a background, Harry.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's good you've touched a little bit about the issues as well. But I think maybe we can delve a little bit deeper, especially for the in the Malaysian sense. We have the global crisis and global initiatives. So now we want to dive a little bit about in for our country. So what are the current issues in terms of the climate governance here in Malaysia right now, especially for businesses?
Okay, so from a business perspective, many businesses are sitting up and to take notice, not just because the regulators are making this front and center. Now, regulators like Bursa actually launched their FTSE for Good index a full year before the Paris Agreement. Bank Negara joined a global network of central banks in 2017. So they have been very strongly advocating for increased reporting and disclosure. So, from the business perspective, they are seeing regulators, governments stepping up and agitating for increased disclosure, right? Well, disclosure is actually a double edged sword because disclosure is actually the first step from a legal litigation perspective to liability. So, first, and we're seeing lawsuits in Australia that government bonds or businesses are not disclosing climate risks. So they sue you for that. And here the regulators are saying you have to disclose this. Now, once you have disclosed this, for example, what is your scope 1, 2, 3 carbon footprint? What are the financial risks that you're exposed to? How you're managing your supply chain, and so on and so forth? Then the next question would be you are not doing enough. And these are lawsuits that are already taking place in the Philippines, in Australia, in the European Union, in UK, in the US, and there's been an exponential increase in such climate litigation. So essentially, you're not doing enough, or you are greenwashing. And then once that has been established, then in the famous case of Shell, which is a Netherlands-based company, less than a year later, the directors were sued because if you are long-term stewards of the organization and that business isn't doing enough to be aligned to a Paris aligned transition, then you have failed in your duty. And it will be almost impossible for directors and the management to claim that they weren't aware. It is complicated, and in Malaysia, right now, our targets, for example, net zero by 2050 at the earliest, so there's no specific date that has been set. On the other hand, science informs us that we need to halve our emissions by 2030 And even this might be slightly out of date because um, the United Nations World Meteorological Organization actually states that we are already warmer by 1.2 degrees, and there is a more than 50% chance of us hitting 1.5 degrees of warming in the next few years. So, this is how serious the problem has become.
Understand. So I think like the next is the issues are not new issues. We've been experiencing it. We've been even the media and all that talk about it, especially large organization right now. Companies they have this ESG requirement and all that. So there's a lot of information going around, and there's a lot. It's you can easily get misguided. So that's why, like, I think for your organization in terms of CGM itself, can you just share a little bit about what is CGM and what you guys do and how do you guys relate to the business world?
Mm. So what our role is to advocate to boards of directors so that they are aware about climate risks and opportunities. So the climate governance principles, which was published by the World Economic Forum in January 2019, are very clear. It's a series of questions which the board of directors can walk through, and anyone really, anyone who runs a business can just walk through to try and understand what is needed to make sure that you are as prepared as you can be and that you're part of the solution and not part of the problem. Because let us be clear, not all businesses will be able to make the transition. And for those that don't, I think it is very clear in conversation with them, they still don't understand the enormity of the problems that we're going to be facing. So, allocators of capital, and I've referred to investors, shareholders, bankers, insurers, they are reading these reports to get a feel for whether the management and the board of directors really understands the extent of this problem. So, should capital be allocated to them, or should capital be be diverted away from them? So CGM does this sort of advocacy work. And what we're finding that amongst our database of about 5,000 people, more than half don't identify themselves as being part of business. So we have a lot of people in civil society, NGOs, civil service, who are interested in this conversation and they want to learn more. So, quite early on, although we are advocating to boards of directors and to businesses, we realize that there is demand in this space for high quality content because we take a lot of trouble to curate the speakers and content. We've organized for well over 200 events to date in the last 3.5 years. And so then the next step that CGM then did is to advocate with government for better policies and better clarity, more ambition, because government plays an important signaling role. There's only so much that businesses can do, but when we are looking at scenarios moving forward, government signaling through policies, through laws, through taxes, through incentives is also critical as to the direction of travel, right? So this is what CGM does. We do a mixture of generating content and also advocacy work with the government. I can't hear you.
Sorry. I think one of the reason we met as well is one of your programs as well,
Yeah,
where we want
that's
to
right.
have a program in terms of
Absolutely.
educating more businesses as well. So I
Yeah,
think that's one of the things that I feel that is lacking here in Malaysia, because a lot of the time when we look at sustainability, we look at examples and all that, it's always like Western centric. It's always like company in Belgium doing this and all that. So there is a disconnect if we do research, and the situation might be different there and all that. So a lot of people said it's Sweden, of course they can do it, and all that. So that's why I think like one of the things that we need to do is to have more local example and
absolutely.
also knowledge
Absolutely.
development and all that, so that at least we can say that okay, this guy in Balakong can do it, why cannot we do it, right? So something that I think we need to have more of. So the question next is more on how actually businesses can take part in climate governance.
Okay, thank you. So, at a basic minimum, please wander over to our website, take a look, because we've got so much content there. You can sign up for the newsletter, sign up for events, and so that you're learning more, right? Because right now we're also crowdsourcing for hyper localized solutions. So, in collaboration with the CEO Action Network, and please go over to their website as well, we've got over 60 CEOs who are also demanding for increased sustainability ambition. And they see this very clearly as a competitive advantage. So CGM, which is cgmalaysia.com and ceoactionnetwork.com, are collaborating for government advocacy. So we first started the series of roundtable sessions on the 19th of April 2019. We had over a dozen roundtable sessions where we were crowdsourcing for solutions, and this eventually came up with a report of proceedings, which we then socialized with key ministries like PPO, MOF, CASA, KETSA, etc. Then last year on Earth Day, we launched the next round of roundtable sessions as well. And bear in mind, these roundtable sessions, we've had thousands of attendees because there's a lot of interest in this space because it relates to business survival. At some stage, people won't be able to invest in you or lend you money. No one will want to buy your products. No one will want to work with you. So I think many business owners and management teams can see the writing on the wall. So last year at the launch during Earth Day, 21st, 22nd April 2022, we also got in other key stakeholders to talk about the urgency and the importance of the issue. And we were delighted that this included Pemangku Raja Pahang, Tunku Besar Sri Menanti, we had Orang Asli, we had the youth speaking. So there are multiple stakeholders that are coming in to this conversation and coming up with really excellent point of views, suggestions, recommendations. So we want to keep this conversation flowing. So what I describe this is large, arguably what is possibly the largest private sector mobilization, and it is for climate ambition and also biodiversity, pollution, and so on. So businesses can take part by wandering over to the website, signing up for newsletters and events, and also being part of this conversation. If you have ideas, then reach out to us, be part of this conversation. And we are very Climb Valley centric, we acknowledge that. So part of this also is getting the content out beyond the Climb Valley. So if you're willing to host an event, a conversation, then please go ahead and organize for hybrid events. And make sure it's recorded. All our events are recorded, accompanied by a blog post. So we're also contributing towards institutional memory as well. It's exactly what you are doing, Harriet. So instead of having one secret conversation in a room with someone, you are generously sharing it with anybody who cares to wander in and learn for themselves. So this is really important to us. And I would personally really like to see the YouTube videos as well, having multilingual subtitles so that more people understand, because this needs to be a Malaysian driven initiative. So I really want to be able to reach out to as many. Remember, fossil fuel is subsidized in almost every country in the world. Carbon pricing alone hasn't worked to decarbonize economies. Solar is a grid parity in many countries, but we are still struggling with decarbonizing the economy. And remember, climate inaction is going to cost us much, much more than climate action. So you need to invest in this now to future proof your business. You will not be able to buy well being during a crisis. So please take this seriously, step up, be part of the ecosystem of solutions.
Agree. So I think like I agree with some of the points, especially on the solution wise, because when we talk about sustainability, it's always solar panels, it's always like expensive machines, expensive raw material. So it's all, there's a lot of misconception, especially for businesses, that made a lot of businesses shy away from sustainability. But I think by having a lot more discussion, a lot more sharing, we can actually find there's a lot of different way to adopt sustainability or seeing sustainability as a whole. Like right now, I've explored some into mental health and sustainability. culture, perseverance, and sustainability. So there's a lot of element in sustainability and climate governance that we take for granted, that we need to have more contributors. We need to have more people talking about different parts of it and finding solution. For example, right now, I've always got the question, what are we going to do with the face mask? Because it's been one of the polluting things, right? So I always answer is, right now, I'm not really an expert of that, but these are some of the questions we need to throw to a lot of people. Because if let's say 50 people talking about the same thing, I'm sure 3 or 4 solutions that they discuss can be a solution for everyone. So that's why I believe in getting a community, or getting more interaction, like you say, from people from other states, for example, and other background, to have this conversation. And that continues with the next question, which is, normally when businesses want to do climate governance for their business, and all that, what are you see the challenges they would face in terms of adopting it?
Okay, so reporting and disclosure is only part of the problem. I think you want to embed sustainability into the DNA of your business, right? So rather than focusing on the challenges, can I just describe a simple roadmap which businesses could take to just go down this sustainability journey? So before you do anything, just set your own internal targets. And it could be a tiny SME, it could be a household. At a basic minimum, can you pledge to be net zero, for example? So all organic waste is composted, all inorganic waste is cleaned, separated at source, and then sent somewhere, which is the right place, for recycling, upcycling, for reuse, or even you yourself, if you can reuse it, right? So that's the basic. And also a basic energy efficiency. Can you use far, far less energy than you're already using? And whether you're a small, big business, whether you're a household, whether you're a school, whether you're a balai police, just look at your tenaga bill. That's a very easy indicator. Look at your water bill. Are you using your water as efficiently as possible? Do you need to use potable water, which is treated fresh water from rivers and piped all the way to you with a huge loss rate? Do you need to use potable water for the garden, for the cars, for the floors, for, just think about it. And then finally, renewable energy. Can you source for your energy to be as renewable as possible? So there's just basic steps that anybody can do in their realm, right? Then number two, as a business, yes, you need to think about reporting and disclosure, because your business strategy or your business plan, your financial statements, or any reporting that you do, what the reader, what the government, what the allocator of capital wants to see is, are you aligned with a sustainable path? Or is your business strategy predicated on the destruction of the planet? Put another way, society wants us to have a smooth and just transition. We're going to be living in a warmer world with a lot of extreme weather events. We want to try and mitigate and mitigate a lot of these impacts and adapt to what this new world is going to look like. This is what society wants. Is your business strategy betting on society not succeeding? Is that really what it is? So think about this from that point of view. So sure, your banker, your investor, your regulator, etc., might be saying this is what we want to see. But at the end of the day, irrespective of whether you want to be part of the global supply chain, you're trying to raise your next round of financing, you're trying to persuade investors or staff or customers to invest in or buy your things or work with you, it really is simply the right thing to do, right? Half of your lungs are outside your body. We rely on the biodiversity, on the ecosystem. Malaysia is one of 17 countries of mega biodiversity in the world. It is simply the right thing to do. So are you going to demonstrate thought leadership and step up and be the person that's championing this right thing to do, right? So I'm not saying that there aren't challenges. There are plenty of challenges. But these are basic things that all of us can be doing. Are you much more mindful about what you're eating and what you're leaving on your plate when you finish eating? Can you commit to being vegetarian for one day a week? 1 week in a month, 1 month in a year, 3 months, 6 months for the rest of your life, for example. Can you do that? That's not difficult. Everybody should. And let me tell you something. You will regret not making that decision to be vegetarian earlier. It's better for your health, it's better for the planet, it's better for the animals. And when you make these sort of lifestyle decisions, you are so much more mindful about the impact that we have on the environment, that everything we do is destructive of the environment. So once you're closer to understanding this is when you will have so much more credibility and confidence and assurance when you then go on to the next step, which is the networking, the advocacy work that you need to do. And this is something that everyone needs to be responsible for. So sure, you've got, composting, being vegetarian, not using straws, so on and so forth. But we really need to send a strong signal to the government, to those in power, that this is the direction of travel that society wants. Right?
Understand. So thank you very much. I think you've changed the question to challenge from challenge to roadmap is much more more beneficial, and I think there's a lot of things that we can improve, and not just bigger things but smaller things like what you say. So my understanding of sustainability also have improved. Before this, I thought that sustainability is about saving the environment. So when I put sustainability in the middle of the company, it's purely about I don't want my business to contribute to deforestation and all that. But after a few years of doing it, we're saying that there's a lot of benefit of having sustainability right smack in the middle of the company. We noticed that our cost is reducing, our margin is increasing, um, our profits also increasing. We created new revenue stream, and right now we have a lot of smart talents that want to work with us. So based on that, we are seeing these benefits are not sustainability. It's not about the environment. It's actually about the business. So it now becomes sustainability is not it's not just saving the environment, it's saving my business. So that's why I feel like I need to pick up with activism and share my story and help a lot of company transition into being more sustainable in a way that makes sense to businesses. We don't want to put sustainability as something that company normally see as CSR, as something that create cost for the company and all that. Of course it does, but also there's a lot of benefits to it. So I did 10 years of studies into circular manufacturing and all that. So I find a lot of things that contradicts to what people normally associated with being sustainable. So my next question to you is like for companies or for individuals that want to go into this slightly deeper, what are the reading recommendation that you would give to them?
So if you go to my LinkedIn account, I recently wrote 2 weeks ago, 2 Mondays ago, about a book that I'm currently reading on time and water by an Icelandic author called Magnuson. And it's very difficult reading. Every 10 or 15 pages, I had to put the book down. And I have been doing this for 3.5 years, right? And part of it was because he was really challenging, even more than I'm challenging you now, why we are doing this. So I'm going to summarize this and in a very clumsy way, but I'm going to try my best because there's so many very complex thoughts that he triggered in me. And I would recommend everyone, well, firstly to read my post and comment there, but also to buy a copy of this book and really think about it. And as I said, every few pages you're going to have to put the book down. So when we go into nature, the wilderness, and think about the last experience that you have, whether you're standing on a mountain, whether you're walking through the rainforest, whether you're diving or snorkeling or sitting by the beach, there is this feeling of enormity that you're going to feel, right? And is there a value to this, right? What is this that speaks to us as human beings? Which children can intuitively understand, and even us, even if we're deeply embedded in the corporate world, in this GDP calculations, etc., that we can actually um, that it resonates with us. And resonance is a very powerful concept. Resonance, like if you have a musical instrument, when the tuning fork plays that note, then it will vibrate even more. So there's something that will uplift you to being an even better version of yourself. So in the past, it used to be poets, artists, people who are in touch with their right brain who would talk about this, and then you use very powerful emotive language, etc., etc. And then as we get into this factory of an education system, then it is very left brain. So when you have something that is binary, either 2 plus 2 is 4, and it cannot be anything else, then it becomes mutually exclusive. This is right, and therefore this is wrong. This will make us money, and this does not make us money. But the right brain is all encompassing, right? And you need creativity, imagination, empathy, compassion to be able to understand things that are not the same as you, right? And so how do we, and especially in this country, as caretakers for mega biodiversity, for the rainforest, for our long marine coastline, how do we explain this in powerful, compelling ways that doesn't just reduce biodiversity, the environment, so on and so forth, to numbers, right? So if half your lungs are outside your body, if we rely on biodiversity and this complex in ecosystem which we still barely understand to survive, if we need topsoil, arable land to survive in a country with no food security, what is wrong with the way we are communicating right now? That people aren't jumping up and they're not taking this more seriously. If you were to see a tsunami coming in your direction, everybody would be scrambling. Right now, we have multiple tsunamis coming in our direction. Why is it that life is carrying on as usual? Why is
Mm.
it? What are we doing wrong? Why is it that we're not communicating this much more effectively? Right?
Mm.
And this is a personal challenge to every single person. Because when you start reading about this crisis, this emergency, everyone should be jumping up and down. Why is it we're not doing that? So yesterday, Greta Thunberg, removed forcibly 20-year-old girl, and a lot of children are seeing because children don't have this layers of logical thinking that makes it impossible. You're paralyzed by inaction, right? So for a child, and I know children who, on their own, they're saying, okay, in that case, I will be vegetarian. All right, in that case, I will only buy secondhand goods. For them, it's very simple. This is the problem. This is what we need to do. I cannot be supporting this because that leads to a bigger problem. But
Correct,
with
correct.
adults, we're so clever at greenwashing and arguments, logic, right? Yeah.
I see that as well. That's why when I do activism, I focus more on children because when adults, there's a lot of, I don't know, a layer of, like, for example, like when I first started doing recycle wood furniture, that is like 2012, there's not a lot much people buying into it because people asking, is it clean enough? Is it strong enough? There's a lot of misconception around that. And until now, if we want to talk about concept of using waste, blah blah blah, there's a lot of uh, pushback into that. But for children, it's like you say, okay, this waste, and we make it into things, and then you can use again, and then they get it and they can just implement it. So I think those are the things that I feel like we need to fine tune as adult as well to accept and actually look into it before making our pushback. Yeah, so I think that is a good point to put as well. And let's go to the comment. We have some comment. We have from Bhaktia. Bhaktia said, "Thank you, Bhaktia, for tuning in." He said, "I become vegetarian and have not looked back since then. It's one of the best thing one can do for the planet." And we have Vincent. Vincent said, Datin, where, in your view, is Malaysia in terms of readiness for implementation? So, Datin?
So I think let us be very clear right now. We don't really have any climate ambition because 2050, net zero by 2050 earliest, I mean, it could be to 100, for example. Reduction of emissions intensity by 45%. There is a blog post by IEN which calculates that this is an estimated doubling of absolute emissions, right? In terms of the biodiversity COP, we agreed to 30 by 30. But if we're already having 55% forest cover, then ambition is 60 by 25, for example. So I think we all need to work together. It's coffee shop talk to say, oh, why isn't the government and why doesn't this person? And, all of us need to step up, right? So how can we all play a part? And this includes, which is one of the SDG goals, partnerships. It's one of the climate governance principles where you need to network, where we need to work together and come up with. So rather than being backward looking and saying, oh, this is the problem, this is why it doesn't work, and why didn't we do this? Can we be forward looking and maybe even be prescriptive about the sort of policy actions, recommendations that we need to see? Which is something that CAN, CGM have been working on. And now we're working on a communique with specific recommendation, and we would like this to be multi-stakeholder as well. So we're going to be reaching out to as many stakeholders as possible to support this communique, which is what we think as a country we need to be doing, right, moving forward.
Agree. So I think that is a good question, and I love we have this kind of question, meaning that people care. So thank you very much for the question. I think before we end, we have one last question about future plans. So if you can share a little bit of what you guys are planning to do and wanted to do, then it's beneficial for all of us.
Okay, so we've been advocating to boards of directors. We've been working closely with regulators and key ministries in the government for many years now. So the Securities Commission is mandating that all directors need to attend sustainability training. So this year, what we're going to do to supplement and support that is we're going to have a series of masterclasses just for chairmen. And of course, different things for directors as well, different sessions for directors. Then number two, we're going to dive deeper into policy recommendations to the government, and this we present to key ministries. We've had close working relationship with many of these ministries, and our meeting with YB Lignazmi on Monday, was it Monday or Tuesday, was very good. I mean, it showed that he really clearly understood the issues, and so we're hoping to deepen and widen this engagement as well. So engaging with government, engaging with multiple stakeholders. This is a transition that's going to need all of government, whole of society. So we want to try and provide this multi-stakeholder platform where people can respectfully dialogue on a fully informed basis. Please come fully informed as a veteran sustainability practitioner, for example. And we want to crowdsource for hyper localized solutions which will reduce environmental destruction and increase our climate resilience. And what we're also doing is that replicating this on an ASEAN level. On the 14th of February last year, we launched the ASEAN Climate Governance Network, where all institutes of directors in the region are part of. So we want to widen and deepen that engagement as well. So it's quite busy, and we're really staffed by volunteers. So we have like 1.5 staff. So we really need more people to volunteer and to step up and to just say, okay, I'm willing to help you do this or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that need to be done, and
Yes.
we need as much hand as possible. So, guys, if you're listening, do help out with the cause. This is something not just for us, but for our future generation. It's something that needs to be done, and we need to do it fast. So, do be part of solution. If not, you're going to be part of the problem. So, we are at the end of the show. Thank you very much, Datin, for your time. If you like this show, please share it. Thank you again for tuning in. See you next week. And as always, have a green week ahead. Bye bye, guys.